Anyone who doesn't talk, mute, please.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us on Synagogue Tech Forum. We're here to help you deliver a better online experience both for services in education in the Jewish space online. Today, Rabbi Tobias Moss will demonstrate how Temple Israel in Minneapolis has produced a lower budget interactive hybrid service with webcams and laptops, and how they are now stepping up with the high-end cameras and permanent installation. This is going to be a great session with great tips for small and large congregations alike. That, as always, will be followed by a number of questions on live streaming, Zoom, or anything else that we've come up from the social media platforms that we look at. Typically, that includes things like the Synagogue Tech Forum, and it also includes the Dreaming Up Facebook group. We also want questions from you, the audience. So how do you ask those questions? We're trying to make it as simple as possible. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, please post your questions into the chat. If you're here with us on Zoom, please use the Zoom QA button. But before we start and get into the session, I just want to quickly introduce the panel and some of the other people involved in today. So I'll start off with my two co-hosts, and first up is Rabbi David.
Hey everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm really excited to learn from Tobias today. I'm David Paskin, your Torah tech guy.
My other host, all the way from the Holy Land, we have Rotem.
Yo, 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 what's happened? I'm Rotem. Really, I saw Tobias set up for this demonstration. Really looking forward for that.
On the panel today, we have a number of other experts who are here to answer your questions, give some feedback, and also to make sure that Tobias doesn't get away with an easy life. And first up on there is Marty.
Hey, Leo, and hi, Tobias. Looking forward to this session today. I'm on the East Coast of the U.S. in Maryland, and I'm an integrator, consultant, and host of the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum.
And finally on the panel today, we have Michael.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. My name is Michael Kyer, and I'm way up here in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And I really can't wait to see the show today. It sounds like it's going to be amazing.
Thank you to the panel. And as I think this is probably the longest anybody has ever seen Tobias go without talking, I'm now going to hand the floor over to him, and we're going to hear exactly what he's been up to. Tobias, it's all yours.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm Rabbi Tobias Moss in Minneapolis at Temple Israel here. And as we demonstrate how we've been using our sanctuary space for interactive two-way hybrid services, I'm joined on the lower bima by Ben Biton, who's a music specialist here and an educator, and Josh Curtis is is the head of maintenance, who's going to be showing some of the space from his device, and as well Gabe Hansen has been our tech maintenance duo role, and he is going to be operating the projectors, which are part of how this all goes. So there's going to be, and panel, please jump in if you want to know more on something that I'm going into, but there's kind of two layers that I want to show about what we're doing. The first is what's from the beginning been an interim solution, but I think a really high level one, and could be a permanent solution in some spaces for the grandeur and status of Temple Israel, which is a 2,000 family congregation. It's definitely an interim solution, and we're in the process of installing a permanent solution. So I'm going to first show the interim solution and then preview what we've got going on as we take it to the next level. So right now, we are set up exactly as we would set up for a Friday night service. And so we have three webcams plugged into three computers to bring us into Zoom. And so I'll turn on my other camera to show this off as well. So on the bima, this is my view. If you switch if you show Tobias Moss. So there's a webcam directly in front of me with a good sight line that I can be looking at congregants and looking at the camera at the same time. And then I have a computer in front of me. Sometimes when we want to lower the imprint of all this tech, we'll close the monitor and just use this black iPad as our confidence monitor visually, just to make it a cleaner setup. But it's webcam into laptop, and follow this camera. At the center bima, we have another webcam on a stand. Can you see the phone camera view? Can someone confirm? Yep.
Yeah, we're seeing everything great.
Okay, great. So another webcam going into a laptop here, and sometimes we can, we close the laptop if we don't need to be seeing everything, and then it's flush. And likewise for the piano, another.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? We need to spotlight this so people not on Zoom can see it, please.
So we're pinning it. It's okay. People are following.
No, they can't. No, they can't see it.
They can't see it. Okay. No problem.
No. Spotlight.
I'll do that bit again on Spotlight. All right, so here is a view of our bima, and thanks everyone for getting to the Spotlight. So what we have is 3 webcams, and we're using Logitech 920s. The Brio would be better, but we had these already for home office use, for remote work. So, so here is one webcam going straight into a laptop. We close the laptop and use just the iPad here as a confidence monitor to make this a cleaner look. Same down here, webcam going into a laptop. And over here we're using a Surface, same thing, connected to a webcam to get the piano. So we have 3 static shots for our Friday night service. We actually do throw on another camera, like the one in my hand, to if a congregant is going to speak from their seat for a certain purpose, or during Lachad Odi, we even open the back doors of the sanctuary and get that on an extra camera to welcome the Sabbath bride, if that's.
And Tobias,
yeah.
do you bring all those cameras in as separate Zoom participants?
Yeah, they're all their own Zoom participant, and then we have someone who's the role of spotlighter, who's essentially our switcher. And then also, I'll show this here too. So also the 2 Bima webcams are actually running through OBS, which enables us to use Singular.live, which is a graphic overlay system. So you'll now see on the upper Bima and the lower Bima, the prayer text come onto the screen, and the page number also for those in the sanctuary who want to open a prayer book, but we actually find that the vast majority just go with the on-screen text, because it's not just on screen, but when we want it, Gabe, it's also, if you switch to the phone again, it's also on the projection of the back wall. And so people in the synagogue can either open a prayer book or look at the service text on the back wall. And
sorry, Tobias.
Yeah, please.
Sorry, forgive me. I'm a little slow here. So You're running the 2 webcams into 2 different computers. On both of those computers, you're bringing them into OBS, and then using OBS Virtual Cam into Zoom?
Yes, perfect. And the extra layer is that we use this service called Singular.live, which creates graphics, but it creates them in the cloud. And so multiple infinite OBS systems can pull that overlay onto their camera. So when we were fully remote and at home, we had every clergy's laptop using OBS drawing on this singular graphic overlay. So no matter who was leading the prayers at home, a third operator could trigger those singular slides. Great. And I'm going to hop out into, Josh, do you want to turn on your camera actually? So if we can spotlight Josh, and Josh, do you want to sit in one of the first few rows? Actually, right there's good. So if we spotlight Josh Curtis, so this is basically the congregant experience in the room, if they're sitting in one of the pews. And as you can tell from here, even the webcams on tripods basically becomes invisible, the same way we don't care if we see a microphone on a stand. And Gabe, would you trigger a slide for the room also? Yeah. So the slides will show up for the Zoom and show up in the room. And Gabe, would you also now show the gallery on the wall? So if we can spotlight just Josh Curtis for the moment. Okay, and great. So on the back wall, we can project whatever we're seeing on the Zoom. And so Gabe, who's by the projector with shortcut keys, can choose to show just the prayer slide over black, over nothing, transparent. He can show the prayer slide over the person speaking in speaker view, or he can show the whole gallery. And so we used each of these at specific moments. For example, at the end of the service, we show the gallery and say, does anyone at home have challah by their side? And 4 or 5 people will hold up a challah to their camera, we'll spotlight all of them, and in the sanctuary, we can all see them. And we can even unmute them for them to lead the blessing or to say hello, that sort of thing. And so we have two-way conversation with whoever's on Zoom. So someone on Zoom could lead the candlelighting blessing, all of that. I haven't touched audio yet, but in terms of video and graphics, any questions from the panel or anything to clarify?
So what are you planning? What is your upcoming game? What are you planning to add?
Let's hold that off until we finish the interim completely.
Yeah,
Okay.
David.
I'd love to hear more about Singular.live. Like without going into too much detail, how easy do you find it to use? Are you able to import, say, from Google Slides or PowerPoint or something like that? I'm really interested in that.
Yeah. So Singular.live, we as a institution have made slides almost from scratch. Another congregation and Rabbi Daniel Bogard gave us what he had started making. But basically you can create different presets of a lower third or a side panel, and then you have to import the text. And it does support Hebrew pretty well, as long as you create multiple text boxes, one for Hebrew, one for English, within the graphic. So here's a great example. Let's keep just the Shabbat candles up for a second. So, and then what's great is that once you build the slides, you can then duplicate them, put them in different playlists very easily. So we have Kabbalat Shabbat, Saturday morning, Hanukkah extra slides, and you can move those around. And once they're in their playlist order, you can send a playlist link to anyone, and it's touch. Very works. And we've been using it since the beginning of the pandemic, and they gave us a free nonprofit license and have had great support. And we've had one outage in the whole time on their end. So we've been really happy about it.
So I had a quick question there, Tobias. I love what you're doing and projecting onto the stone. Mm-hmm. And actually this is I've seen this in a couple of places. I assume I'm taking a punt at the fact that it looks like it's Jerusalem stone, and it seems to be the sort of thing that you can actually project really well on if the room. Do you have any issue with the light in the room? Did you have to do anything? Did you lower the lighting to make it bright enough on the screen, or not?
Josh, who has revamped all of our lights in the sanctuary to great LED dimmable lights, but he says just high contrast project.
Is that a new high contrast laser projector?
4K high contrast laser projector.
Yeah, it's amazing. And how far is that projector away from the actual wall? Because it looks like it's quite a distance.
Yeah, it's very far.
Can we see that?
If you spotlight Tobias Moss again. So they're in the balcony in the back of the.
Wow, that is a really long throw. So that was a long throw lens that you had to. So for just looking at that, you would have had to get a long throw lens put onto that to make that work. It's pretty good.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
pretty good.
What's the brightness on those projectors?
He says the brightness could go higher even, but we don't know we don't know how to tell you that. And the lighting in here is LED lights across the ceiling that can do any dimmable setting.
Okay.
So that's all. Videos.
That's on there. Gabriel has got his hand up. I don't know if he's got his hand up because he's wanting to tell us something or.
Oh, we can lower his hand. We covered it.
I can't. I'm not host. Somebody who's a co-host can. Okay. So you're giving us a good example. So everything just so that I understand this also, the production that you've just did there, everything you're showing us, although Tobias, you're on the Bimmer, it's all being controlled from remote. Is that right?
Yeah. So to operate this service, we prefer to have someone riding the audio mixer, which we'll get to next.
Yeah.
And then we need someone spotlighting, and we need someone operating the singular slides and the projector.
Got it.
And that leaves clergy having to do nothing.
We like that. We like clergy. They've got a big enough job anyway.
Yeah.
And are those all volunteers, Tobias?
At the moment, it's all staff, and we have we used to use more volunteers to run the projectors pre-pandemically, and maybe as we establish a new normal, we'll bring volunteers back in, but for the moment, we've kept it within staff.
So what staff positions are participating?
It's been kind of all hands on deck at different times. So from when we first established the system, I was playing more of a role in its operation, but we've had clergy assistants operate aspects of it, the whole maintenance team essentially. For operating the prayer slides, sometimes it's useful to have someone who's Jewish or has been to many services already, so we'll ask someone who's more familiar with the service to operate something, especially if it's a service that's infrequent, just a given holiday. But for Shabbat, Friday night and Saturday morning, Gabe runs the slides and has learned the flow of the service, and we give a good cue sheet, and it works great.
So you touched on something there really quickly before we move on to sound, and that was that you're saying you were doing a lot of this and it's now, and you already have projectors in place. Did you already have them onto the Bimmer before
we started
lockdown?
Using, we call it off the wall, when we project a prayer on the wall. And we had been using PowerPoint for that, and we had started that 5 years pre-pandemic or something like that, or even longer, for certain services, not for all of them. But the projectors were already in place and at a high quality. We didn't have a week-to-week live streaming. So that's why when we came back in from the pandemic, we needed an interim solution. For the High Holy Days, we'd been hiring a team that brings in their own TriCaster, their own cameras and camera operators. But that was, you can't do that for every week.
And my last question, and then I'll throw over to Rotem. So what you're saying is that you were doing this all externally. You now brought most of this back in-house, as I understand it. And now you're in the point where you're saying, well, we're self-sufficient. We can now look at ways and we can move this forward. That's my take of what you've just said there.
Correct. And also we had a pipe dream of installing the permanent solution pre-High Holy Days this year. But with all the tech supply line stuff, it wasn't realistic.
So I've got a question from Rota and question from Marty, and then we'll go on to the sound. Yeah. Rota.
Actually, two questions. First one. No. It's pretty much the same, but two questions. Does the slides on the show, on the actual ceremony, help you with something? That is my first question. And the second question is the live streaming. did the community got bigger because of the live streaming?
Mm-hmm. So I'll answer the second question first, and then I'll ask for clarification on the first. So one thing that, just to emphasize, we've been really Zoom-centric. So we do push from Zoom to Facebook Live, but all of our encouragement is for people to join us on Zoom. And then I intentionally build into every service, towards the beginning, towards the end, opportunities to spotlight people on Zoom, to bring up the gallery view. At the end of the service, we do schmooze breakout rooms, all of that to make sure that that there's a reason to be part of it. It's not just a live stream passive experience. We've had lots of congregants come out of the proverbial woodworks who had stopped coming into the congregation physically for various reasons. We've definitely had, in Minneapolis, you may have heard that we have brutal winters. So lots of congregants end up in Arizona or Florida for the winter, and now they're able to still be very active. And yeah, definitely people have been finding us online. I don't have a number to point to, but yeah.
That's great. Rotem, was there a follow-up or Marty?
No,
Marty.
okay.
Marty, you had a question?
Yeah. So this is quite remarkable, and I want to thank you for this because one of the things that we really try to impress upon houses of worship who are contemplating doing this is that the viewer experience and presentation quality really, really matters to do it well, and that's not an easy thing to do. So can you tell us about the process that you went through to figure out what your goals were, what your expectations were for streaming, how you wanted to do it, and can you walk us through that process of how you came to arrive at this solution?
It's a tough question. It's been incremental, and it was happening when we were fully remote in the pandemic. Up to that point, I didn't know OBS, had never heard of Singular, didn't know the proper camera angles and all of that. Definitely did learning trial by fire, participated in office hours, which is another venue that we're often, many of us go to learn this kind of stuff. And basically tried to up our home game. And then this is basically a remote kind of setup in an actual structure in the same room. So, in terms of using webcams, different, OBS, not using a video switcher. So at the moment, it's kind of like we took the best of a remote setup and just put multiple in the same room. So that's been an aspect of it. But
how many people were on your task force, on your task group that came together to contribute ideas and work through the process?
I'd say I've really spearheaded how we think about this, but have gotten great participation from everyone else on the staff to operate it, to tell me what wasn't working about it, to be critical about it. But I think I've been driving it.
I think we want to,
as we go into the permanent installation, it's definitely like a full maintenance team collaboration.
I think let's have a chat. I think you've got the audio to talk to us, and then you've got where we're going next. So we can just do those, and then we can come back to some other general questions.
Sure. So the audio is pretty simple, actually. Conceptually, what it is we run all the audio into a mixer, which Josh is going to show in the back of the room. So we just have a Yamaha CL1 that has all of our sound going into it. Even though our sanctuary has like a big QSC controlled sound system, to get the two-way zoom flexibility and not do reprogramming twice, we're using an external, like gear external to our built-in system for the moment. So all of our sound runs into that mixer, and that mixer runs into a often ridiculed Focusrite that goes into this computer. And so all of the sound from every single microphone, and we can use dozens of inputs. All the sound goes through the Focusrite, which is what do you call these boxes? A USB interface. Goes into the Focusrite. The Focusrite goes into this primary Zoom computer with original sound on, and then that's how all the sound comes in. And the sound coming out of this computer is also what goes back into the speakers, so that way it's automatically a mix minus. So we've had no echo issues. We do have a high-level sound engineer, Brad Woodhouse, who's been making sure this works. Oh, and Josh Curtis.
That's great.
Josh Curtis mentions as well that our sound assist, hearing assist devices, which we had working with our permanently installed system, have been also operational with this system.
Rabbi David.
Answer this now, or you can wait until after you do the new install. I'm curious about all the wires, all the gear you mentioned before about maybe just using the iPad. How has the community sort of dealt with the intrusion of technology into the sacred space?
So it's never been an issue. We want to clean it up, but if you spotlight Josh Curtis again. So we do have these speakers at the front of the Bima currently. Once we have Josh Curtis spotlit. Yeah, so we have speakers at in front of the Bima, which we wouldn't have permanently. Josh, you want to just show the installed speakers, the big ones? So we do have speakers permanently installed that will be, you can't even see them, they blend in so well, basically. But for the moment, yeah, there. But to give us flexibility with Zoom and changing things up, we went with more easily accessible external speakers. And during the High Holy Days, we definitely, wanted to make sure that no one would trip on them, and thought about how people would enter the space. But we've tried to make it as clean as we can. And then on the Bima, we have gaffer's tape covering tons of cabling. And it's not, it's an interim solution, but we have no trips so far. So that's how we've dealt with the gear. And
have your congregants commented though on? I'm less, because folks I talk to are less concerned about tripping and a little more concerned about the aesthetic. The whole idea of what they perceive to be bringing technology into a sacred space.
So the best way to answer that is when a congregant turns 95 years old and you put them projected on the back walls at home surrounded by their family, and they do the candlelighting blessing, and then everyone's good. So
Good solution. Good solution. Are there any more questions that we have in respect to the audio? Rotem.
I just want to mention something. So as a guy that doing live stream and owns a lot of gear, I have a lot of respect of what you're doing, the simplicity of what you are doing on the production value you can bring to the ceremony that you're doing. So it's like you don't need to own. This is like what I want to say. You don't need to own a lot of expensive gear and a lot of like cameras and stuff like that to do a proper live stream and a show and to bring the added value to the people that online.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think I'd agree. I think I really agree.
So if I can just emphasize that for a moment for those who are less familiar with all of this, probably your institution has laptops able to run this already. Probably you have all these webcams that were purchased during the pandemic. In terms of direct expense for this, it was really super minimal. Besides the sound gear stuff, we've been renting gear, so that's been a price. But yeah, like Rotem says, it's really medium or low budget and very good. And what you see with people who have been relying on like one PTZ camera or something like that, is all these super zoomed out shots. And we chose shots that are really like you were getting during the remote pandemic isolation, just the person into the camera, so to keep that connection.
I like that. I like that personal connection, the engagement, the eye contact, because the cameras are so close, somebody who's standing at the bema, who's standing at the pulpit, can really engage with the audience. I do have a couple of questions, if I could.
To add one more thing to that, we've had lots of bar and bat mitzvah children lead the service, and depending on what they were excited about, we either had the gallery view open in front of them the whole time so they could see their cousins the whole time, or if they were a kid that's more easily distracted, we close the laptop and just open it at the end, unmute everyone to say Mazel Tov. And so even youth and adults have interacted with the technology on the bema, not just the clergy, and it's been really seamless.
Beautiful, beautiful. The 3 laptops that you have up there, how are they connected to the network? Are they wired or Wi-Fi?
The 2 primary ones, upper bema, lower bema, are Ethernet, which we had to buy, a 300-foot cord or whatever, because we didn't have Ethernet on the bema previously. And then the third one on the piano, we thought if it glitches a little bit, we're okay with that. So that one's Wi-Fi.
And I found it interesting that for people in the room to hear somebody from Zoom, you're coming out of a laptop and going directly into the speakers. So do you have any control over that? How would you control the volume in the room?
On the mixer, the Zoom input back into the mixer is on a fader and can be ridden.
Oh, okay. So maybe I misunderstood. I thought you said there was an output from the computer on the bema that's going to the speakers.
It goes first to the mixer.
Oh, so you're running it all the way up to the mixer first. Oh, okay. Great. And then you mentioned the hearing assist system. So that's a very important element in a sanctuary for people who have hearing challenges to be able to participate and hear and appreciate. And so I think you just answered my question. I was asking how do they hear people from Zoom, but you have it running through the mixer, and that's perfect.
Correct.
Yeah, great.
Rabbi David, I saw your hand on this.
I was just, David Eppinger in the chat was just saying that the biggest challenge for synagogue groups, small synagogue groups, is the sound connection interface and sharing both ways. You said that you haven't had issues with that echo feedback loop. Do you do any, how do you manage that?
I think it's really, Zoom is managing it because it's only one. This computer in front of me is both the input and output to Zoom, to and from Zoom. So Zoom is only pushing back into the room an input from Zoom, and I think that's really where.
But if I'm right on this, Tobias, somebody's actually managing the desk, aren't they? You've got somebody managing the audio of the desk.
Not right now, for example.
But in an ordinary service, do you or not? Do you unmute and mute Zoom?
We have the Zoom spotlighter would mute any foul actors or whatever.
Yeah.
But
it's just you only unmute people in Zoom when they're talking. You bring them. Yeah. I think that's the biggest. That's always the trick.
We don't need to, every time someone's speaking from Zoom, mute the rest of the system. We don't need to.
Okay. All right. Okay. So moving on, let's move on to the third part, and then we can always come back on some points.
Yeah. So Josh. I'll first say it conceptually, and then we can show it a little. So we want to get this tech off the bema. So we're having 3 PTZs installed on the back balcony. And They are going to get painted the same color as the balcony, actually, so that they disappear more. And then there's going to be one. If we can we spotlight Tobias Moss as well? So just to give perspective, so there's the 3 PTZs in the back of the room, and then there's going to be one more PTZ in the upper wing overlooking the bima, to give the Torah scroll shot, to give the congregation swoop, and to capture if there's a band over there. So we'll have 4 PTZs running into a production room that's just off the sanctuary, which will have the TriCaster and the mixer that's mixing the Zoom mix. And then in the back of the room, we'll still have the mixer that's making the room mix. And Singular.live will still be how we generate graphics for the foreseeable future. And we have an integrator installing this as we speak. I can talk about some like the specific decisions we made around this, but that's the concept.
Really interesting. Interesting to see that you've gone down that route. What do you feel? I mean, if you start with the very basics, was this an upgrade that you felt that you needed because people were saying that the camera quality wasn't there, or that you felt that this is just a natural progression? What was the driving force?
The flexibility is a big driving force, right? So right now, I have to be here. If I walk 3 feet away from the camera, I'm no longer on camera. So we've had to choreograph every service to fit within our 3 camera views, or 2 camera views basically. And we actually, our senior rabbi, Rabbi Marcia Zimmerman, her preferred sermon style is to be on a wireless mic walking up and down the bima. And so she's been contained in a box and not so happy about that. So and also for different musical configurations, you want different camera angles, basically for camera angle flexibility.
Got you.
The service.
And then you've got those 3 cameras up. Have you used those cameras yet?
No, programming starts at the end of the month.
So I see this quite often. I'm sure Marty will probably also come in on this as well. I see the spreader cameras very often start with 3 cameras very distantly spread, and then they get moved together because the angles may look good and you may get the maximum amount of angles, but the usability becomes really restrictive because you can't, if you want to capture something, you typically want to capture it 2 places from the same point. And so you want 2 cameras that are actually dead on and one that's an alternative, because you want to be able to go. So if you've got 2, I don't know, I couldn't remember if you've got it.
Right now, we have center aisle, left aisle, right aisle.
Yeah. So what I've seen in a lot of cases that they move one of those left or right to the center, so you end up with 2 centers, so that you can get the 2 pulpits in, and you can swap between them without having a very, very different shot. So you can have a close and a wide on the same element. I would love to see what's going to happen in that respect, because I've seen this happen quite often, and also you lose the focus of for the rabbi where to look. If the main shot is in the center, they know to look in the center.
Yeah,
we shall see.
Yeah, it's something we talked about for a long time. It's basically a we'll see. The High Holy Day team that we brought in with full cameras on tripods, they configured themselves this way, and so that was kind of a model for it. But yeah,
I think it's Tobias, I think it's an interesting. I don't think there's a right and a wrong one. I don't know. When we looked a couple of weeks ago, David, with your walk-in arc, I can't remember. Were your cameras always? Is it typically all down the same place, or you've got different places on your cameras?
I'd say they're about 3 meters apart from one another. They're pretty spread out. And I'm not sure that was the right choice that they made.
Josh, sorry.
So the cameras are in, but you're not starting the programming of them for another month, you said.
Well, it's a holiday in America coming up, and also the camera that's going to be over the Bima, we need to bring in a big lift to install it. So it's going to take some time for that. But
so do you see an ability to run the existing system and the new system joined, or they've got to be completely separate? Can you add one of those cameras into your current system?
In theory, but the goal is definitely we're going to run them both overlapping for like a few weeks to make sure everything's working, and that our staff can get trained on how to operate that. But then, our goal is to pull down the wonderful interim solution.
And get rid of all the cables. I think we've all been there. It's that the aesthetics of cables, and I think it was said earlier by others, the aesthetics of cables in a sanctuary don't really lend themselves to be,
Here we're even more concerned about the safety of cables, to be honest. But both,
okay,
of course. And
so I have a couple of quick technical questions on there. One is, with those cameras, are you connecting those? What technology are you using to connect them?
They're all power over Ethernet, and they'll be NDI.
Okay, and you said you made a decision which some watching will not know what it is. You said you're going to be using a TriCaster. Mm-hmm. Can you tell the people watching what a TriCaster is and why you chose it?
Okay, sure. So a TriCaster is essentially a computer that has the capacity to take in many video inputs and audio inputs and push out several video inputs and video outputs and audio outputs. And also you use the TriCaster to switch among the cameras, and use the TriCaster to push to Zoom, to push to live stream. And because operation of the system is still something that needs to be figured out for our institution, short-term, long-term, the TriCaster being a more standardized system than vMix, which would be more custom, we went with the TriCaster.
It's an interesting choice. And I would love to see, once you've got that up and running, how you go with it and how it works. Mm-hmm. David,
real quick, and Leo, this may be a question for you. Is the TriCaster comparable to like an ATEM Mini Pro or ATEM Mini Extreme? Is it the same kind of thing?
No, it really is a custom computer. It's created by the same people that create Wirecast, off the top of my head. It's quite a high-level production system, and it's what we would call in the UK a Marmite product. You either like it or you hate it. There isn't anybody that sits in the middle of it. It's so I don't know if that translates, if there's an equivalent spread in the US to Marmite, or I've just explained something that nobody understands. But there's a pretty much 50-50 hate or love it.
There's
Marty,
no in between.
You probably there's no in between. Marty, you must have come across it quite a lot.
Oh, yeah. They've been around for a while. They were the first highly integrated, custom designed television production studio in a box. So the computer, the software, the capture cards, the output, graphics drivers, everything is custom integrated into a singular product, including the switcher software, the audio stuff, everything is in there. And it skews towards higher level production, like broadcast level production, which makes it usually more expensive than a lot of people prefer to pay for a system. And so they go with something like vMix, which is also more capable, but requires more self-configuration,
exactly,
on site.
And from my personal vantage point as a rabbi who's been leading this, and I think our institution is thinking about how to staff our technical decision making in the future. But as a rabbi here, I don't want this to be my all-consuming work and troubleshooting a custom-made vMix machine and blah blah blah, and computer parts and technological parts are hard to find right now. So I was much more happy with an out-of-the-box solution that.
I think one of the things with all of these is there isn't a right solution. I think the right solution is to actually move forward to do things, and if it doesn't work, you can always, the cameras you've got are great, the other stuff is great, everything, and so is the TriCaster. It's great, and if it just turns out that you need to tweak it, you need to tweak it. I'll be really also interested to see how you'll go along with the graphics and everything, because that's quite an integral part of how you'll deliver those into there. What other questions do we have from the panel or for Tobias?
I'll add just a couple.
Tobias.
Just a couple details of the permanent installation. Our Bima already has lots of audio inputs and electricity running through it and all of that, but we're expanding with some floor boxes that have, we're going to have 4 Ethernet lines run into 3 locations on the Bima. So if we later want to install monitors, cameras, or Dante audio boxes, we'll have infinite expansion on the Bima with less cord stuff in the way, which Josh is super excited about. And what else did I want to add? That element? That's what I remember for the moment.
Marty, questions?
All right. So I was going to ask earlier, now appears to be a good time. The computers on the Bima, particularly the one that you're running audio to and from for Zoom, how are you interfacing audio to that computer, and how are you running it up to the balcony where the mixing desk is?
So the audio comes in and out of Zoom. The first step is the Focusrite interface, and then that gets converted into I think an XLR cable all the way back. It's snaked around the back of it's snaked around the perimeter of the sanctuary and taped down, and goes back to the mixer.
Okay, the Focusrite is generally oh, that's right. So USB to the computer and then analog line level in and out. Okay, great. Interesting. And just as a note, the TriCaster also has graphics packages that are included or are optional to that, and it's a great system. Good luck with it. It is a really good choice. On the camera positioning that Leo was mentioning, it is really nice to have those 3 cameras that give you options for different angles for different parts of the Bima, which in your case extends almost wall to wall. But to get that, so what Leo, I believe, was trying to get to was that having 2 cameras in one place that are for your main shot, like for the podium where you're standing right now, to have a wide shot and a close-up shot ready to switch between them, and requires 2 cameras in one place. And what some people will do is put a non-motorized box camera that can have a zoom lens on it, but it just doesn't pan or tilt. And that can give you the close-up shot or a medium shot, and then have a PTZ right next to it that you can use either in the same shot or move it somewhere else. And then that's a little lower cost option.
Tobias, which cameras have you gone with?
They're Panasonics, right? I think they're 30x zoom 4K Panasonics.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. Okay.
Very nice.
That's fine. That's fine.
And
yeah, because as Marty says, you can get box cameras which actually match, so that give you a similar perspective, and even to the point that you can undersling them underneath that mounting potentially, so it doesn't look like there's a second camera. So,
Josh,
and it'll give you that same shot.
Josh, if you point the camera towards the bima, so if we spotlight the Josh Curtis again, just our beam is quite spread out. So I don't know if that also we'll just play out different. We'll just see how that plays out in terms of.
I think every time, you know, if you've got the flexibility to move them, you may need it. If you don't have the flexibility, you don't know. You just don't know. And it also comes down to almost to the point of which congregants sit where that block out the view of the cameras and everything. So you just don't know, really.
So Josh, if you look at the camera, please, the one close to you. So I want to point out something about the camera location. So we were gonna mount it underneath the bima. Josh, could you back up a little?
You mean underneath the
underneath the balcony?
Balcony, yeah.
Josh, give us a little more downward perspective. Perfect. Okay, right there. Thank you. So we were going to mount it underneath the balcony, but we thought, one, teenagers might jump up and do a volleyball spike on it, and two, anyone sitting in those pews where the balcony has already begun will see the camera moving. Where the cameras are mounted now, no one who's oriented towards the bima has any view of the cameras at all. So that's why we.
Yeah, I think it's a great location.
Yeah.
I think it's an absolutely great location, as you say. It's just blending them in. That said, I think they probably look like an eyesore now, or they look like something new. Give it 6 weeks, and nobody will remember they were there. So, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to. No, please.
Dave, okay, so Josh is reminding. So the other big reason why we did the on the balcony instead of under the balcony is because from on the balcony we can sweep up to our historic, beautiful ceiling, and also sweep the whole room. Whereas if it was under the balcony, we could maybe not even get the eternal lights. We couldn't get any of the higher features of the room. But now, because they're on the front of the balcony, we can get, the whole space.
Yeah, because if they were under the balcony, they would be turned upside down.
They'd be turned upside down, and they would be inset on the balcony a little bit and not be able to get a sharp angle.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you did any experimentation about the exact location of these cameras and what the important shots will look like. Because if you move a camera left or right and focus on where you're standing right now, your background would change. Right?
Right.
So did you select those positions specifically for that shot?
We did the best we could, Josh and I being amateur cinematographers. So we did walk around the space and look through a camera to imagine what the shot would look like from each spot, and which cross angles, which direct angles, and we looked at our high holiday videos and said, did we like the camera angles they used? And at the end, we weren't positive what the best decision was. Likewise with the one camera that's going to be behind, on top of the bima facing the congregation, there were a few possibilities of where to put it. We're taking what we think is the best, but they're not that easy to experiment. It's not that easy to preview the shot. So, yeah.
I think as we were saying earlier, it's getting it going, trying it, finding out where it works. You can spend forever and ever and ever. But it's that's it.
Any
David.
decision.
Sorry, Rotem.
No, just to emphasize, any decision is a good decision between not having a decision.
Yeah, I think Rotem, you've summed it up perfectly. David.
Yeah, I'm being conscious of our time because we have some other questions, but I also just want to circle back to the beginning and really thank you, Tobias, and your entire team there for walking us through this. I don't know your congregation, but when I look at your sanctuary, it tells me that you have a larger congregation, perhaps with a larger budget than some of the rest of us. And so I really just want to go back to where you started, which is if all you have is 3 webcams, use 3 webcams. Like, I mean, Gay goes into, hey, I'm so excited to hear about the upgrades that you're making. I think it's going to be amazing. And you look great with 3 webcams. You know, your stream was fantastic with what you had. And so, I think many congregations will be going through this sort of growth process that you all are going through in their own unique, different ways.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So I'm curious, what will happen to the webcams on the BEMA once you have the PTZs ready to go?
We'll sell them on the black market, or more staff will have better webcams.
Logitech, they're just Logitechs, and they.
No, I know.
Unfortunately, you're not going. I know. I'm laughing. It's they're not. It's. I don't think you're going to get much money for a 920 anymore. The days have gone of the.
I was wondering if you might keep them or some versions of them to get those tighter shots with the wider background.
So I am curious how we can, without running, what ways to tie in extra webcams to the TriCaster if we want a certain extra angle that we don't need a built-in amazing camera for. But so that's something I'll look into in the future.
Marshall has these little tiny POV cameras with NDI outputs.
Okay.
That
Perfect.
like you can just plop them on a little clamp or something, and nobody will ever see them.
Perfect.
I'm conscious, as David said, of time. I think this has been absolutely great. This has absolutely opened my eyes to certain things. I still got to go back to the beginning. Tobias, your projection onto your Jerusalem stone is stunning, absolutely stunning, and it just doesn't interfere. In my mind, you just don't realize it's there until it's there, and it just looks really nice. It just looks like it was something that was added that adds, not detracts when you've got a screen there. It just is a great thing, and I've seen it in a couple of places.
The architects in 1919 or whatever, they knew that we were going to need this big open space of wall, and they saw this coming.
They saw it coming. That's it. They shipped that stone. Thank you, Rotem, for shipping all of that stuff out of the promised land all the way over. There you go. Okay. Thank you again. David, you've got some general questions for us. Let's rock into those. And Tobias, hopefully your team or yourself can stay on for any questions and answers.
For sure.
Beautiful. All right, so we do have some questions. So this first one is from me, and I apologize for putting myself first. But I wrote, many communities are thinking about what a digital membership might look like and how digital engagement might support our communities financially. What are the panel's thoughts?
Let's start with some big ones. This is really an interesting one. Please raise your hands, anybody who's got some thoughts on this. I think this is a big seismic change that we're going to see in the world that we're in. From my side over this side, membership for synagogue has always been based around long-term membership, including burial rights, including family rights, and that suddenly we're finding that there is the ability to join a congregation that maybe isn't where you were and look at it in different ways. I have had or seen a number of discussions about this, and I think it's gonna make some sense long term. I wonder how many are also going to go over to looking at, rather than a membership, but they're going to look at other ways of doing it, including donations and other areas. What else? Has anybody else come across this, David?
Well, yeah, I'll just throw in that as I was thinking about this in the shower this morning, I was thinking, on the one hand, we want to live stream our services. We want to get them out there. Even what Tobias is doing about encouraging people to come to Zoom, and yet it's still out there on Facebook, because we want that, sort of free, as it were, publicity of that, our services or our classes, whatever. So I was thinking about, how do you make people pay for something like that? And the best thought I came up with was, that maybe the live streams themselves should be behind a paywall, as it were, so that people, at whatever level, contribute something to support the production of that. But then what the way we use social media is to take snippets, a snippet of the sermon, sort of like, the Late Show with whatever his name is, Stephen Colbert, right? If you want to watch the entire show front to back, you have to have a cable subscription and watch it there. If you just want to watch snippets, you just go to YouTube the next morning.
It's an interesting concept. Moving on, where are we, David?
David, you're muted.
I knew that. I apologize.
Happens to the best.
Hybrid conferencing. I'm currently using a TV monitor on stand hooked to a laptop with HDMI, a Logitech webcam, and a USB mic in the middle of the table. Problems are people at home can't see so well. It's from Rabbi Rona.
So I see this as quite a common issue, and we are getting, and really, I guess this leads very closely back to where Tobias was saying. A webcam was only ever built really for a distance of person to webcam of about an arm's length. It's that sort of thing, or 2 arms lengths, whichever way you count it. It was not designed for in the middle of a room to there. And I guess this is where you're saying, Tobias, you've ended up having to put a camera where you probably didn't want a camera to be, so that people can actually see you at a size that, and there's a natural thing, and I'm actually slightly lower, but if I go sort of there, that's the sort of the standardy size that you want. I guess, so it's getting the right camera. Rotem.
It's getting the right camera, right? So yeah, you need to invest if you want to look better, but it may be also the Zoom account you got. So maybe the Zoom account is not 720 or 1080. So you can go and ask Zoom in the chat to bump your Zoom account. Every account can bump their account to 720 if you ask them. And you need to go and ask them to do 720, and maybe this is part of the problem.
Marty and then Tobias.
So yes, the particular kind of camera and the lens and the view width of the camera will make a big difference. So for something like for a conference room where there's a conference table or something, I would look at the Jabra Panacast. Now this is a USB webcam, but it has a 180 degree, a full 180 degree viewpoint. So it can see the entire room, and then it will auto sense how many people are actually sitting in the room and will zoom down to that view so that you can see people who are talking. And if there's a lot of people in the room, it will open itself up wide, so you don't have to make that kind of adjustment. And that will help people watching on the other end to be able to see better and get a better sense of in the room and how many people are in it and who's in it.
And Tobias, did you want to bring something on this?
Yeah, just to talk past the question a little bit, just that with a single camera, it'll be hard to get amazing video of multiple conference room participants. So even if the video never gets to what you want of, direct image on each person when they're talking, try to make sure that the sound is good around the room, no matter who's speaking. That's an even bigger factor.
Great. David, next question.
Next question comes in from Rabbi Robin. What is the relationship between Zooming and live streaming, and what are the best practices for combining the two? And just for context, this question came in part because they were streaming from OBS to StreamSpot and also using the OBS virtual cam to go into Zoom. They were not streaming from Zoom out. And it seemed to be really taxing their computer. So that's the genesis of the question.
Tobias?
So if your desire is that someone who's watching a live stream will see the multiple Zoom participants, then you'll need to live stream first you'll have to first run your camera into Zoom, and then with everyone else's feeds in Zoom, restream that. So that would be really key. Some people create just kind of watch parties in a Zoom, and there's a live stream going into a Zoom, and people just go to the Zoom to watch that live stream, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having, I mean, there's purposes to that, but it's not a full purpose use of Zoom. So if you want to have interactivity, then you'll want to do that within Zoom, and then you can restream exactly what we're doing right now. We're all in a Zoom webinar, but you could watch us on Facebook Live, and you'll see each of us go to that. You'll see all of us in conversation. So that's how that works.
Marty?
Right. So Tobias is right. It depends on what you want your viewers to see, right? So you're sending one or two cameras, or maybe you're switching between cameras if you're using something like OBS or vMix. You're sending that to Zoom. And if you're also sending that to a streaming provider, then that's what those people are going to see. If you have Zoom sending to the stream provider, then your audience who are watching the provider's stream will see everything that Zoom people will be seeing. So there's a difference there. The other important factor is that when you're going to Zoom and then having Zoom relay that out, you're only sending out one data stream, and that's the amount of bandwidth that you'll need. When you send to Zoom and somebody else, now you're sending out two streams, and you're utilizing double the bandwidth requirements from both your inside network and your internet bandwidth as well.
And you're probably taxing the computer processor more.
And the computer as well, correct, yeah.
Great, okay. Next question.
What do you all use for audio recordings for B'nai Mitzvah students to download? Google Drive, Dropbox, something else? Any tips or thoughts on what to use and why? This is a long overdue project from my shul, and I wonder what your best practices are. This is from Rabbi Nathan, writing on Dreaming Up 5782.
Tobias, and then Marty.
I think I saw this question come in our Facebook group, and so I'll restate some of the things I've said there, which is I've created a Google Drive folder that is shared with everyone on our staff who would want to be able to access our recordings. And then within that, I create subfolders for each student and share that subfolder with the student. Any new subfolder I make, because it's in the bigger folder that is already shared among staff, the staff will have access to any new folders I make, but the students can only see their own materials. And then I can add things over time, like if I give them just the Torah recordings at first, but want to give them a Haftarah recording later on, then I can just throw that into the same folder. So that's how I do it.
Marty, and then to David.
Google Drive is very easy for anybody to access. Now, I was participating on multiple committees at a church that I was belonging to, and we had lots and lots and lots of files, and we were using Dropbox. And we quickly found out that Dropbox has very stiff limitations on how much data you can use, your file storage, and any file that is owned by somebody else but shared with you goes towards your quota. Even though you don't own it, it goes towards your quota. And so we all ran out of file storage space on Dropbox and would have had to pay Dropbox for a higher level of membership or subscription just so that we can continue to do our work. And you don't have that kind of restriction with Google Drive.
Okay. David, did you have anything to add on this one?
I was only going to add that I think I also responded on that post. And I wrote that you might want to think about just building a page on your website where you host all those recordings. Why just share it with the one kid who needs it today? Let's make them available to everyone, so that anyone who wants to learn that particular Torah reading or Haftorah reading or whatever it is has access to it. So that might be another thing to look at.
I would absolutely agree. And when you think about it and you think about the life cycle of some of this and where you will be with over a period of a number of years, you're going to repeat the same information, and you've got that, and you're going to build a library and a bank. And it's also very interesting. I always think when you go back and you listen to how things change and the way you do these things change, and it's interesting to hear how they were a number of years ago to how you would actually chant certain things and how those things move and go forward. Okay, David, next question.
Yeah, so I think I'll share this one last question for today because I'm looking at the clock. So the question is, looking to get a Zoom meeting recorded with an audio transcript. This is from David in Dreaming at 5782.
Okay, I'll take this. So the audio transcript is there in the Zoom. If you're recording, you can get the output there. There's a number of actually applications that I've also used that enable you to post in a recording, and they will give you a transcript back. The names, I didn't have the question ready, so I can't remember the one off the top of my head that I've used, but it's actually amazing. It's pretty accurate at it. And what it does is it asks you to label each of the voices that it hears, and then it will actually assign the voices, each one. I think I've just clicked on something.
Hours, weren't they?
I think they were, and the name has gone out of my mind, but I tried it, and it was just for trying to fix something recently. It was just really accurate for doing a meeting, minutes from meetings. Tobias?
I'm going to shout into the ether for the moment, but maybe you all know how to do this better than I do, which is that I have a Zoom and transcription feature request for Facebook and Zoom and YouTube and everyone, which is, we all know that once we get into a Hebrew prayer, the auto-transcriber falls apart and says ridiculous and offensive words sometimes and just goes off the rails. So I think these transcription services could super easily add in a feature where once its algorithm detects that its success and accuracy and confidence rate is below 60% or whatever, that it just says foreign language detected and just doesn't try until the accuracy is more confident. And then, because right now, I mean, if anyone's seen the transcription, it's an embarrassment when it starts taking the Mourner's Kaddish and says, "Oh boy, let's get it together," or whatever.
Rotem.
I will never, as an Israeli, on a Hebrew stream, will use any software transition, because it will never detect, it will do awful stuff, and I would never use it.
David, on this one?
Yeah, just real quick. I don't know if this is what you were thinking of, Leo, but if you haven't heard of Descript, this is
It is Descript.
It is Descript. Yeah, this is a great service. And what's powerful about it, not only is the transcription it does and allowing you to assign different pieces to different voices to different people, but you can actually edit your video in using text. So if you cut out something in text, it will make the appropriate change on the video end. It's really pretty cool. So that's at descript.com.
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to, sometimes we forget and then we realize, is we're at the beginning of some of these processes, and what these processes will look like in 5 years' time, how these processes will work, will be radically different. Some of them, as Rotem says, they're not quite there, they're not good enough. But some of us will remember how satellite navigation used to take you down roads that you can't drive, and lorries would get stuck. And it still happens occasionally, but the number of times it happens is small. So we will see these improve, and we'll see them get better. Thinking about it, languages, it should be able to literally detect when somebody flips between one language and another. particularly when it starts understanding the nuances of the pronunciation of words, because that's a key component of how languages works. But maybe a discussion for another day. So this is great. David, that's the last of our questions. Again, thank you so much, Tobias, for today. It was a great introduction. I hope that I think you've created more questions in my head than you've answered, which is always a really good way to end anything that we deal with. For everybody that was watching, thank you for joining Synagogue Tech Forum. We will be back in 2 weeks' time. In a week's time, we'll be back to the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum run by Marty. Or not. Marty's
Rabbi
Oh,
Marty.
you just promoted him to rabbi.
Did I?
You said Rabbi Marty. I love that.
Sorry.
Marty just got a promotion.
There you go, Marty. So it'll but in a week's time, it'll be Marty running Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum. So we look forward to that. I don't know what we're covering in a week's time. And then we'll be back. Although actually, I have a feeling we may not be, because are we right in the middle of...
It's Thanksgiving, so I think they're probably skipping.
It's Thanksgiving, yes. Yes, so we will
you're
take a
skipping
turkey
is
break
Thanksgiving.
next week.
That's it. You'll take it. That's it. We're coming up to holidays for everybody. So we will be back soon. Thank you again to my panelists. Thank you again to the other hosts. And we will see you all